The old city bus wheezed to a stop at Fifth Avenue, its brakes making that familiar squeaking sound that Riley had grown used to over the past few months. She stepped down onto the sidewalk, adjusting the straps of her faded blue backpack as she looked up at the towering glass building in front of her. The sign above the entrance read, "Elegance Fashion Store," in bold, shiny letters that caught the afternoon sunlight. Riley took a deep breath and smoothed down her simple jeans. They were clean but had seen better days, with a small patch near the knee where she had sewn up a tear herself. Her white sneakers, though comfortable, showed signs of daily wear and countless walks through the city. She didn't look like the typical customer who shopped at places like this, and she knew it. But Riley had a secret that nobody could guess just by looking at her. 3 months ago, her life had been completely different. She had lived in a beautiful house in the suburbs with her parents, attended private school, and never worried about money. Her father, David Chen, owned one of the largest fashion companies in the country. Chen Fashion Empire had over 300 stores across America, and elegance was just one of them. Everything changed when her parents died in a car accident. Riley, who had just turned 17, suddenly found herself alone in the world. According to her father's will, she would inherit the entire business when she turned 18. But until then, she had to live with her Aunt Maya in a small apartment downtown. Aunt Maya wasn't poor, but she wasn't rich either. She worked as a teacher and believed that Riley needed to understand what life was like for ordinary people. "Your father always worried that wealth would make you lose touch with reality," Maya had told her. "He wanted you to learn how the world really works before you take over the company." So for the past 3 months, Riley had been living a completely different life. She rode public buses instead of private cars. She shopped at discount stores instead of designer boutiques. She even got a part-time job at a local coffee shop to earn spending money. Her aunt had made her promise not to tell anyone about her real identity. "People treat you differently when they know you're rich," Maya explained. "Your father learned that lesson the hard way when he was young. He wanted you to see how people really are when they think you're just like them." Today was different, though. Today, Riley had decided to visit one of her family's stores. She had been curious about how the business actually worked from the customer's side. She had grown up hearing about sales numbers and profit margins at dinner table conversations, but she had never just walked into one of the stores as a regular person. The glass doors of elegance opened automatically as she approached. The cool air conditioning hit her face, carrying the scent of expensive perfume and new leather. The store was bigger than she had imagined, with high ceilings and bright lights that made everything sparkle. Mannequins dressed in beautiful clothes stood like frozen models throughout the space. Riley felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. She had been to fancy stores before, but always with her parents, always dressed in expensive clothes herself. Now, in her simple outfit, she felt completely out of place. The floor was made of polished white marble that reflected the lights above. Glass display cases showed off handbags and jewelry that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Everything was arranged perfectly, like a museum where you could actually buy the art. Other customers moved through the store with confidence. Riley watched a woman in a designer dress examine a silk scarf, turning it over in her manicured hands like she was considering buying it without even checking the price. Another woman near the shoe section was trying on heels that probably cost more than Riley's monthly bus pass. Riley wandered slowly through the aisles, trying to look casual. She had learned a lot about fashion from her father over the years, even though she had never paid much attention at the time. Now she found herself noticing details that other customers missed. The way the fabric fell on a particular dress, the quality of the stitching on a jacket, the careful placement of every item to catch the light just right. Near the back of the store, she found a section with evening gowns. One dress in particular caught her eye. It was deep blue, almost the color of the ocean at night, with tiny crystals sewn into the fabric that sparkled when she moved closer. Riley reached out to touch the sleeve, feeling the smooth silk between her fingers. She remembered her father teaching her about different types of fabric when she was younger. "Feel this, Riley," he would say, holding up samples in his office. "Real silk feels different from synthetic. Quality shows in the details that people don't always notice." The price tag hanging from the dress made her eyes widen. $800. For most people, that would be a huge purchase, something they would save up for months to afford. For the old Riley, it would have been pocket money. For the current Riley, living on her small coffee shop salary, It might as well have been $8,000, She was so focused on examining the dress that she didn't notice someone watching her from across the store. Kevin Rodriguez had been the manager of this elegance location for almost 15 years. He took pride in running what he considered one of the most successful stores in the chain. His sales numbers were always high, his customers were generally satisfied, and his staff respected him. But Kevin had developed some habits over the years that he didn't like to admit, even to himself. He had gotten good at sizing up customers the moment they walked in. The woman in the designer dress would probably spend at least $500 today. The businessman browsing the men's section looked like he was shopping for a special occasion, maybe a wedding or important meeting. These were the customers Kevin made sure got the best service. But when he saw Riley touching the expensive evening gown, something bothered him. Her clothes were too casual, too worn. Her shoes had scuff marks. Her backpack looked like something a high school student would carry. In Kevin's mind, she was exactly the type of person who wasted his staff's time, handling expensive merchandise she couldn't afford and then leaving without buying anything. Kevin had seen it happen before. Young people would come in, take pictures with expensive clothes for their social media, maybe even try things on, and then walk out empty-handed. It hurt his sales numbers and annoyed his genuine customers. He decided to keep an eye on her. Riley continued exploring the store, unaware that she was being watched. She found herself genuinely impressed by the quality of everything she saw. Her father had built something remarkable. The attention to detail, the careful selection of brands, the way everything was presented, it all showed the kind of standards that had made Chen fashion empire so successful. She picked up a handbag from a display table, admiring the craftsmanship. The leather was soft and perfectly stitched. The hardware gleamed like real gold. It was the kind of bag that would last for decades if taken care of properly. But as she set it back down, she noticed a man in a dark suit approaching her. His name tag identified him as the store manager. The expression on his face wasn't friendly. Riley's heart began to beat faster. She had a strange feeling that her peaceful shopping experience was about to take an unexpected turn. Kevin Rodriguez straightened his tie as he walked across the polished floor toward the young woman, examining the handbags. He had made up his mind about her the moment she walked in, and everything he had observed since then only confirmed his suspicions. The way she touched the merchandise so carefully, like she was afraid of breaking something, the way her eyes widened when she looked at price tags, the way she seemed to be taking mental notes of everything around her. In Kevin's 15 years of retail experience, he had developed what he called his customer radar. He prided himself on being able to tell within minutes whether someone was a serious buyer or just a browser. And this girl, with her worn clothes and nervous energy, was clearly in the wrong place. "Excuse me, miss," Kevin said as he approached, his voice carrying the tone he used when he wanted to establish authority. "Are you finding everything okay today?" Riley looked up, startled by the sudden attention. The manager was standing closer than felt comfortable, his arms crossed over his chest. Something about his expression made her stomach tighten with worry. "Oh, yes, sir. I'm just looking around," she replied politely, setting the handbag back on its display stand exactly where she had found it. Kevin noticed how quickly she put the bag down, as if she had been caught doing something wrong. This only reinforced his belief that she didn't belong in his store. "I see. And are you shopping for anything in particular today? A special occasion, perhaps?" The question seemed innocent enough, but Riley could hear something underneath it that made her uncomfortable. It was the same tone she remembered from when she was younger, and adults would quiz her about things they already assumed she couldn't answer correctly. "Not really," she said honestly. "I just wanted to look around and see what you have." Kevin's smile became thinner. "Well, I appreciate your interest in our store, but I should probably let you know that most of our items here are quite expensive. That handbag you were just looking at, for example, retails for $1,200. Riley felt her cheeks grow warm. She knew exactly what he was doing, trying to make her feel embarrassed about her financial situation so she would leave on her own. It was subtle, but not subtle enough that she didn't recognize it. "I understand that your items are expensive," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm just browsing right now." But Kevin wasn't satisfied with that answer. He had seen too many teenagers come in here over the years, handling merchandise worth more than their parents made in a month. sometimes accidentally damaging items that the store would then have to write off as a loss. His job was to protect the store's interests, and that meant making sure the right customers got the right attention. Of course, he said, though his tone suggested anything but agreement. It's just that we find browsing can sometimes lead to misunderstandings. Our customers who are actually making purchases today might need access to these displays. Riley looked around the store. There were maybe 8 other customers spread throughout the large space, none of them anywhere near the handbag section where she stood. The implication was clear, but she tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not in anyone's way, she said quietly, and I'm being very careful with everything. Kevin felt his patience wearing thin. The girl was polite enough, but she was also stubborn. In his experience, people who couldn't afford to shop somewhere usually got the hint and left when he started talking about prices. The fact that she was still standing there, still insisting on her right to browse, struck him as suspicious. Look, miss, he said, dropping some of the false friendliness from his voice. I'm going to be straight with you. This is a high-end retail establishment. Our average transaction is over $400. Most of our regular customers have been shopping with us for years. They trust us to maintain a certain atmosphere. Riley stared at him, hardly believing what she was hearing. Are you saying I can't shop here because of how I look? I'm saying, Kevin replied, taking a step closer, that maybe you'd be more comfortable at one of the department stores in the mall. They have a lot of nice things there too, and the prices are more accessible. Other customers had started to notice the conversation. Riley could feel their eyes on her, and the humiliation was almost overwhelming. She had never experienced anything like this before. When she shopped with her parents, store managers would practically roll out red carpets for them. Now dressed in regular clothes, she was being treated like a criminal. I have every right to be in this store, she said, her voice stronger now despite the embarrassment. I haven't done anything wrong. Kevin's expression hardened. Actually, miss, this is a private business, and I have the right to refuse service to anyone I choose. And right now I'm choosing to ask you politely to leave. Riley felt like she had been slapped. You're kicking me out? For what? For being disruptive, Kevin said smoothly. For making our other customers uncomfortable. For handling merchandise that you clearly can't afford. Take your pick. One of the sales associates, a young woman named Lisa, who had been watching the exchange from behind the jewelry counter, shifted uncomfortably. She had worked retail long enough to recognize what was happening, and it made her sick to her stomach. But Kevin was her boss, and she needed this job. Riley's hands were shaking now, not from fear but from anger and humiliation. She had never been spoken to like this in her life. Part of her wanted to reveal who she really was, to watch the manager's face change when he realized he was talking to the owner's daughter. But she had promised her Aunt Maya that she wouldn't use her family name to solve her problems. This is discrimination, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the quiet store. You're judging me based on my appearance. Kevin laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Discrimination? Miss, I'm running a business. I have to make decisions based on who's likely to be a profitable customer and who's just wasting my time. And in my professional opinion, you fall into the second category. Several customers had stopped shopping entirely now, openly staring at the confrontation. Riley could see a mix of expressions on their faces. Some looked uncomfortable, others seemed curious about the drama unfolding, and a few nodded in agreement with the manager's words. I want to speak to your corporate office, Riley said, trying to keep her composure. This is unacceptable behavior. Kevin reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. Feel free, he said, holding it out to her. But I can save you some time. Corporate backs up their store managers when we make reasonable decisions to protect our business interests, and asking someone to leave who clearly doesn't belong here is a reasonable decision. Riley took the card with trembling fingers. She looked at it and felt a bitter irony wash over her. The card had the Chen Fashion Empire logo at the top, her father's company logo. Below that was the corporate customer service number that would eventually lead to executives who worked for her. Now, Kevin continued, I've asked you nicely twice. I really don't want to have to call security, but I will if necessary. Why don't you just save us both the embarrassment and leave quietly? The threat of security made Riley's decision for her. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of having her physically removed from a store that her family owned. But as she turned toward the exit, she made herself a promise. This wasn't over. You're making a mistake, she said quietly, looking Kevin directly in the eyes. A bigger mistake than you could possibly imagine, Kevin shrugged. I doubt that. Have a nice day, miss. As Riley walked toward the front of the store, she could feel every eye in the place following her. The shame was overwhelming, but underneath it, a cold anger was growing. She had learned something today about how people were treated when they didn't have obvious wealth or status. It was a lesson she would never forget. Behind her, Kevin watched until she disappeared through the glass doors. Then he turned back to his store with a satisfied expression, completely unaware that he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. The other customers slowly returned to their shopping, but the tension in the air remained. Lisa, the sales associate, found herself unable to concentrate on her work. Something about what she had just witnessed felt very wrong, even if she couldn't put her finger on exactly what it was. Outside on the sidewalk, Riley stood for a moment in the afternoon sunlight, trying to process what had just happened. People walked past her on the busy street, going about their normal days, completely unaware that she had just experienced something that would change her forever. She pulled out her phone and looked at the corporate customer service number on the business card. For a moment, she considered calling right then and there, but something stopped her. Maybe it was her aunt's voice in her head, reminding her about the importance of understanding how the world really worked. Maybe it was her own desire to handle this the right way. Whatever the reason, Riley put the card in her pocket and started walking toward the bus stop. She had a lot to think about, and some very important decisions to make. Riley walked out of Elegance Fashion Store with her head held high, but inside she was shaking with anger and humiliation. The afternoon sun felt too bright on her face as she made her way toward the bus stop. Trying to process what had just happened to her, what she didn't know was that someone had been recording the entire confrontation. 23-year-old college student Diana Martinez had been browsing the shoe section when she first noticed the manager approaching the young black woman near the handbags. At first, Diana thought it was just normal customer service, but as the conversation continued, she realized something much uglier was happening. Diana had grown up in a family where her parents owned a small grocery store in a predominantly Latino neighborhood. She had seen firsthand how people could be treated differently, based on their appearance, their accent, or their zip code. When she heard the manager's increasingly hostile tone and saw the young woman's dignified responses, something inside her snapped. She quietly pulled out her phone and started recording. Diana captured everything from the moment Kevin told Riley she would be more comfortable shopping somewhere else, all the way through his threat to call security. The audio was crystal clear, and the video showed Riley's composed but clearly hurt reactions to each insult. As Riley walked out of the store, Diana felt sick to her stomach. She looked around at the other customers, expecting to see outrage on their faces, but most had already gone back to their shopping as if nothing had happened. That made her even angrier. Diana quickly left the store herself, her expensive shoes clicking on the marble floor as she hurried toward the exit. Outside, she could see Riley sitting at the bus stop, staring down at her hands. Diana wanted to approach her to apologize for what had happened and offer support, but something held her back. The young woman looked like she needed space to process what she had just experienced. Instead, Diana walked to a nearby coffee shop and sat down with her phone. She watched the video again, her anger growing with each viewing, the manager's condescending tone, his assumptions about Riley's financial situation, his casual dismissal of her right to be in the store. It was everything that was wrong with how people treated each other in 2025. Diana opened her social media apps and began posting the video everywhere she could think of. She wrote a caption that captured her feelings. Just witnessed this racist manager kick an innocent young woman out of Elegance Fashion Store for the crime of looking poor. This is absolutely disgusting behavior, and this man should be fired immediately. Share this everywhere. Justice for Riley. Racism in retail. Elegance Fashion Store. She posted it on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. Then she sent it to her friends, her classmates, and even her professors who had taught her about social justice issues. Diana had about 3,000 followers across all her platforms. Not huge, but enough to get things started. The response was immediate and explosive. Within an hour, Diana's phone was buzzing constantly with notifications. Her friends were reposting the video with their own angry comments. Their friends were sharing it too. The video began spreading beyond her immediate circle as complete strangers discovered it, and felt compelled to share their own outrage. The hashtag, Justice for Riley, started trending in the local area first, then spread to other cities. People shared their own stories of retail discrimination in the comments. Others tagged news reporters and civil rights organizations. The view count climbed steadily. 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. By evening, the video had been viewed over 100,000 times across all platforms. Riley, meanwhile, had no idea what was happening online. She had gone home to her aunt's small apartment and spent the afternoon in her room trying to decide what to do next. She kept pulling out the business card Kevin had given her, staring at her father's company logo and feeling a mixture of sadness and fury. Around dinner time, her Aunt Maya knocked on her bedroom door. "Riley, honey, you have a phone call," Maya said, sounding confused. "It's a reporter from Channel 7 News. She says she wants to talk to you about something that happened at a store today." Riley's heart stopped. "A reporter? How did they get our number?" "I don't know, but she says there's a video going viral online. Something about you being mistreated at a fashion store." Riley grabbed her laptop and quickly searched for her name online. What she found made her gasp. The video was everywhere. News websites had picked up the story. Social media was exploding with support for her, and calls for Kevin Rodriguez to be fired. The hashtag, Justice for Riley, was trending nationally. She watched the video that Diana had recorded, seeing herself from an outside perspective for the first time. Watching it back, the discrimination was even more obvious and painful than she had realized while living through it. She could see her own dignity in the face of Kevin's hostility, but she could also see the hurt in her eyes that she had tried so hard to hide. The comments section was filled with thousands of messages of support, but also with people sharing their own similar experiences. Riley realized that what had happened to her wasn't unique. It was part of a pattern that affected countless people every day. Her phone started ringing. Then it rang again. And again Maya peeked into her room. "Riley, there are 3 more reporters on the line now, and someone from something called BuzzFeed. What's going on?" Riley stared at the computer screen, overwhelmed by how quickly everything had spiraled. She had gone from being completely anonymous to being the center of a national conversation about racism and retail discrimination in the space of a few hours. Meanwhile, at Elegance Fashion Store, Kevin Rodriguez was having the worst evening of his life. His district manager, Patricia Williams, had called him at home around 6 o'clock. Her voice was cold with fury. "Kevin, what the hell did you do today?" "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, though something in her tone made his stomach clench. "There's a video going viral of you throwing a customer out of your store. A young black woman. The video has been viewed over 50,000 times in the past few hours, and every single comment is calling for your head." Kevin felt the blood drain from his face. Someone was recording? Apparently so. And now it's all over the internet, along with our store name and your full name. The corporate office is in crisis mode. We're getting hundreds of angry calls and emails. Our social media is being flooded with 1-star reviews. "Kevin, what were you thinking?" Kevin tried to explain his reasoning, but even as he spoke, he could hear how weak his justification sounded. She was just a teenager browsing expensive items she couldn't afford. "I was trying to protect our real customers by humiliating a potential customer based on her appearance, by making assumptions about her financial situation." "Kevin, we've talked about this before. This is exactly the kind of behavior that gets companies sued and managers fired." "But Patricia, you know how these kids are. They come in, handle the merchandise, waste our time." "Stop talking, Kevin, just stop. You've done enough damage for one day. Don't come in tomorrow. Don't come in until you hear from corporate HR, and Kevin, start updating your resume." The line went dead. Kevin sat in his living room staring at his phone. He went online and searched for his own name. What he found terrified him. The video was everywhere and his face was clearly visible. People had identified him by name. They were calling his store, leaving angry voicemails. Someone had found his personal Facebook page and was posting the video there too. His wife came into the room. "Kevin, what's all this about?" "My sister just called me asking if it was really you in some video online." Kevin buried his face in his hands. In 15 years of retail management, he had never imagined that a routine day at work could destroy his entire career in a matter of hours. Back at the corporate headquarters of Chen Fashion Empire, executives were working late into the night trying to manage the crisis. The company's stock price had already begun to dip in after hours trading as investors worried about the potential impact of the viral video on the brand's reputation. Nobody at corporate knew yet that the young woman in the video was Riley Chen, daughter of their late founder and heir to the entire company. That revelation was still to come, and when it did, it would turn an already explosive situation into something unprecedented in corporate history. For now, Riley sat in her small bedroom, watching her phone ring constantly as reporters tried to reach her for interviews. She had to make a decision about how to respond to this sudden fame, and she was beginning to realize that her choice would affect not just her own future, but the future of her father's company and potentially thousands of employees. The girl who had walked into Elegance fashion store that morning as an anonymous teenager was gone forever. In her place was someone who had the power to create real change if she was brave enough to use it. Riley Chen woke up the next morning to the sound of her phone buzzing non-stop on her nightstand. She had finally turned off the ringer around midnight, but the screen kept lighting up with missed calls, text messages, and social media notifications. The digital clock next to her bed showed 6:47 a.m., but she felt like she hadn't slept at all. The video of her confrontation at Elegance fashion store had exploded overnight. What started as Diana Martinez's angry social media post had turned into a full-blown national news story. Riley's face was now being shown on morning television shows across the country. Though most outlets were protecting her privacy by blurring her features or only showing her from behind, she wrapped herself in a bathrobe and walked to the small kitchen where her Aunt Maya was already making coffee, her laptop open on the counter. Maya looked up with tired eyes. "It's gotten bigger, hasn't it?" Riley asked, though she already knew the answer from her aunt's expression. "Honey, this is beyond big." CNN picked it up. "The Today Show wants an interview. Someone from the NAACP called an hour ago. And—" Maya paused, looking uncertain. "Your father's company called." Riley felt her stomach drop. Chen Fashion Empire called here. The CEO himself, a man named Robert Kim. He said he wanted to personally apologize for what happened and invite you to meet with him to discuss the situation. Riley sat down heavily at the small kitchen table. Robert Kim had been her father's business partner and closest friend. When her parents died, he had taken over as CEO while the company waited for Riley to come of age. He knew exactly who she was. "What did you tell him?" "I told him you weren't taking calls from reporters or corporate executives right now," Maya said. "But Riley, he seemed to know something about you." The way he spoke, it wasn't like he was just calling some random customer. Before Riley could respond, her phone rang again. This time it was a number she recognized, her family's longtime lawyer, Mrs. Patricia Nguyen. Riley had specifically asked Mrs. Nguyen not to contact her unless it was an emergency. "I think I need to take this one," Riley said, answering the call. "Riley, my dear, I'm so sorry to bother you, but we have a situation." Mrs. Nguyen's familiar voice came through the speaker. "The video from yesterday has created a crisis at the company. The board of directors held an emergency meeting this morning. Stock prices are dropping. Customers are calling for boycotts." Robert is beside himself. Riley closed her eyes. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that I think it's time to consider revealing your identity. People are rallying behind you as a symbol of injustice, but they don't know that you have the power to actually fix this situation. Your 18th birthday is only 2 weeks away. Maybe it's time to step forward." Riley had been dreading this moment for months. She had enjoyed the anonymity of living as a regular teenager, even though it had its challenges. Once her identity became public, her life would never be normal again. "I need some time to think about it," she said. "Of course. But Riley, don't wait too long. Every hour this story grows bigger, it becomes harder to control the narrative." After hanging up, Riley spent the morning reading through hundreds of comments and messages from people who had seen the video. Many shared their own stories of discrimination. Others offered support and encouragement. A few criticized her for playing the victim, or suggested she should have handled the situation differently. But what struck her most were the messages from young people her own age, particularly young women of color, who wrote about similar experiences they'd had in stores, restaurants, and other businesses. They thanked her for standing up with dignity and grace even though she couldn't have known she was being recorded. One message particularly touched her. It was from a 16-year-old girl in Chicago who wrote, Watching you stay calm and dignified while that man treated you so badly gave me hope. I've been through something similar, and I didn't handle it as well as you did. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like." Around noon, Riley made her decision. She called Mrs. Nguyen back. "I want to hold a press conference," she said. "Today, if possible. I want people to know who I really am, and I want to talk about how we're going to fix this problem." "Are you sure, honey?" "Once you do this, there's no going back. I'm sure. But I want to do it the right way. I want to announce some real changes, not just apologize and hope it goes away." 2 hours later, Riley stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her aunt's apartment, getting ready for what would be the most important moment of her young life. She had chosen a simple but professional outfit, a navy blue dress that her aunt had helped her pick out, along with the small pearl necklace that had belonged to her mother, the press. Conference was scheduled for 3 p.m. at the downtown office, building that housed Chen Fashion Empire's headquarters. Mrs. Nguyen had arranged everything, working with Robert Kim to set up a proper media room and coordinate with news outlets. As Riley walked into the building where her father had worked for so many years, she felt his presence with her. The lobby was exactly as she remembered it from childhood visits: marble floors, modern art on the walls, and a directory listing all the companies that rented space in the building. Chen Fashion Empire occupied the entire top 3 floors. The elevator ride to the 28th floor felt like it took forever. Riley's hands were trembling slightly, but her resolve was solid. She knew what she wanted to say, and more importantly, she knew what she wanted to do. The media room was packed with reporters, cameras, and lighting equipment. Riley had never seen so many people focused on her before. Robert Kim was waiting near the podium, looking older and more stressed than she remembered from her father's funeral. "Riley," he said, giving her a gentle hug, "I'm so proud of you for doing this. Your father would be too. Thank you, Mr. Kim. Are you ready to help me change some things around here?" He smiled for the first time all week. "Absolutely." Riley walked to the podium and looked out at the sea of faces and cameras. The room fell completely silent. "Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Riley Chen, and I'm the young woman you've seen in the viral video from Elegance Fashion Store yesterday." She paused as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several reporters were already typing frantically on their phones and laptops. "I want to start by thanking Diana Martinez, the brave woman who recorded what happened to me and shared it with the world. Because of her courage, we're having a conversation that this country desperately needs to have." Riley took a deep breath. "But there's something else you need to know about me. Something that makes this story even more important." The room was completely silent now. "I am the daughter of David Chen, the founder of Chen Fashion Empire. When I turn 18 in 2 weeks, I will inherit this company and become the owner of over 300 retail stores across America, including Elegance Fashion Store, where I was discriminated against yesterday." The silence exploded into chaos. Reporters started shouting questions, camera flashes went off, and several people in the back of the room were speaking rapidly into their phones. Riley waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "Yesterday, store manager Kevin Rodriguez kicked me out of a store that I will soon own, simply because he made assumptions about my worth based on my appearance. He didn't know who I was, and that's exactly the point. Every customer should be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their race, their age, their clothing, or their perceived wealth." She looked directly into the camera that she knew would carry her words to millions of people. "This isn't just about me. This isn't just about one store or one manager. This is about a culture that allows people to be judged and mistreated based on prejudices and assumptions, and I'm going to use every resource at my disposal to change that culture." Riley went on to announce the Dignity Initiative, Dari's comprehensive program that would retrain every employee in the Chen Fashion Empire on unconscious bias, customer service equality, and inclusive business practices. She announced the creation of a scholarship fund for young people from underserved communities who wanted to pursue careers in fashion and retail. Most importantly, she announced that Kevin Rodriguez had been terminated immediately, and that any employee who engaged in discriminatory behavior would face the same consequences. "Some people might say I'm too young to run a company this size," she concluded. "They might say I don't have enough experience, but I have something that no amount of experience can teach. I know what it feels like to be judged unfairly. I know what it means to be treated as less than human because of how you look, and I will never let that happen in any business I control." The questions that followed were intense and emotional. Reporters wanted to know about her plans for the company, her thoughts on Kevin Rodriguez, and her feelings about becoming one of the youngest CEOs in corporate America. But the question that made her pause came from a young journalist in the front row. "Riley, what would you say to other young people who face discrimination but don't have the power or resources to fight back like you do?" Riley thought for a moment. "I would say that dignity is not something anyone can take away from you, no matter how they treat you. I would say that your voice matters, even when people try to silence it. And I would say that I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you don't have to fight these battles alone." As the press conference ended and Riley walked off the podium, she knew that her life had changed forever. The anonymous teenager who had walked into Elegance fashion store yesterday morning was gone. In her place stood someone with the power and responsibility to create real change. Outside the building, protesters who had been calling for justice for the unnamed girl in the video were now celebrating the revelation of her identity. Signs that had read "Justice for Riley" now read "Riley Chen for Change" and "From Victim to Victor." But Riley wasn't thinking about the crowds or the cameras as she rode the elevator back down to the lobby. She was thinking about that 16-year-old girl in Chicago who had written to her about finding strength, and about all the other young people who faced discrimination every day without viral videos or corporate empires to help them fight back. She had work to do. 6 months after the viral video that changed everything, Riley Chen stood in the executive office that had once belonged to her father, looking out over the city where her journey had begun. The space had been redecorated to reflect her own personality. The heavy, dark furniture replaced with lighter, more modern pieces, and the walls now featured artwork from young artists of diverse backgrounds. It was her 18th birthday, and officially, she was now the owner and CEO of Chen Fashion Empire. But the real celebration wasn't about her age or her new title. It was about what she had accomplished in the months since her press conference. The Dignity Initiative had exceeded every expectation. All 347 stores in the Chen Fashion Empire network had completed the comprehensive training program that Riley had developed with help from civil rights organizations, diversity consultants, and former retail workers who had experienced discrimination themselves. The program didn't just focus on avoiding obvious racism. It taught employees to examine their unconscious biases, to question their assumptions about customers, and to provide excellent service to everyone who walked through their doors. More importantly, the initiative had spread beyond Chen Fashion Empire. Other major retail chains, worried about their own viral moments and inspired by Riley's example, had implemented similar programs. Universities were studying the initiative as a model for corporate social responsibility. Riley had been invited to speak at business conferences, civil rights events, and even at the United Nations about the power of young people to create systemic change. But today, Riley was most excited about visiting the place where it all started. She walked into the renovated Elegance fashion store accompanied by the new store manager, Carmen Flores. Carmen was a 28-year-old Latina woman who had worked her way up from sales associate to assistant manager, before Riley promoted her to run the flagship location. Under Carmen's leadership, the store had not only recovered from the boycotts and negative publicity of 6 months ago, it was now the highest performing location in the entire chain. "Ms. Chen, we're ready for your visit," Carmen said with a warm smile. "The staff is excited to show you some of the changes we've made." Riley still felt strange being called Ms. Chen by people who were older than her, but she was getting used to her new role. "Please, Carmen, just call me Riley, and I can't wait to see everything." The store looked completely different. The cold, intimidating atmosphere that Riley remembered had been replaced with something warmer and more welcoming. The lighting was softer, the displays were more accessible, and there were comfortable seating areas where customers could relax while shopping. Most noticeably, the staff was much more diverse than before, reflecting the community the store served. "One of the biggest changes," Carmen explained as they walked through the store, "is how we approach customers. Every person who comes in gets the same greeting, the same attention, the same respect. It doesn't matter if they're wearing designer clothes or if they just got off the bus like you did that day." Riley smiled at the reference to her own experience. The story of her discrimination and subsequent revelation had become something of a legend in retail circles. But she was pleased that Carmen and her team were using it as a teaching tool rather than treating it like ancient history. They stopped near the handbag section where Riley's confrontation with Kevin Rodriguez had begun. A young sales associate named Marcus was helping a teenage customer try on different bags, patiently explaining the features of each one without any pressure or judgment. The customer was clearly still in high school, dressed in simple clothes that reminded Riley of herself 6 months ago. "That's exactly what I wanted to see," Riley said quietly. "Every customer being treated with dignity." Carmen nodded. "Marcus is one of our best employees. He actually applied for the job after seeing your story on the news. He said he wanted to work for a company that valued fairness over profit." They continued the tour, meeting with staff members and observing interactions with customers. Riley was particularly impressed with how the team had embraced the new policies. Rather than seeing them as restrictions or rules to follow, the employees seemed to genuinely understand the importance of treating everyone equally. In the break room, Riley sat down with several staff members to hear their thoughts on the changes. Lisa Williams, the sales associate who had witnessed Riley's original confrontation with Kevin, was among them. "I have to tell you, Riley," Lisa said, "watching what happened to you that day was one of the worst moments of my career. I knew it was wrong, but I was afraid to speak up because Kevin was my boss." "I understand that fear," Riley replied. "That's why we've implemented the anonymous reporting system. No one should have to choose between doing the right thing and keeping their job." Another employee, David Park, raised his hand. "The diversity training really opened my eyes. I didn't think I had any biases. But the program helped me recognize assumptions I was making about customers without even realizing it." This was exactly what Riley had hoped to hear. Real change didn't happen through punishment or fear. It happened through education and understanding. After the store visit, Riley returned to her office where her assistant handed her a folder containing letters from customers across the country. This had become one of her favorite parts of the job, reading feedback from people who had experienced the improved customer service at Chen Fashion Empire stores. One letter particularly caught her attention. It was from a mother in Detroit who wrote about taking her teenage daughter shopping for a prom dress. The daughter had been nervous about entering the high-end store because of their family's modest income, but the staff had made her feel like a princess, helping her find a beautiful dress within their budget, and even offering a payment plan to make it more affordable. Another letter was from an elderly man who had been shopping for his wife's birthday gift. He wrote about how patient the sales associate had been in helping him understand different jewelry options, never making him feel foolish for not knowing about fashion trends. But the letter that moved Riley to tears was from Diana Martinez, the college student who had recorded the original video. "Dear Riley," it read, "I wanted you to know that your response to what happened has inspired me to pursue a career in social justice law. Watching you turn a moment of humiliation into a movement for change showed me what real leadership looks like. Thank you for proving that young people can make a difference in the world." Riley wiped her eyes and picked up her phone to call Diana. They had stayed in touch over the past 6 months, and Diana had become not just a friend, but a trusted advisor on the Dignity Initiative. "Diana, I just read your letter. Law school, really?" "Really?" Diana laughed. "You inspired me to think bigger about how I can help people. If an 18-year-old can reform an entire industry, maybe I can reform the legal system." They talked for a few more minutes about Diana's plans and about the ongoing success of the initiative. After hanging up, Riley turned her attention to a special project she had been working on. The Chen Foundation, established with profits from the company's improved performance, was awarding its first round of scholarships to young people from underserved communities who wanted to pursue careers in business, fashion, or social justice. Riley had personally reviewed every application, looking for young people who shared her passion for fairness and equality. The scholarship recipients would be announced at a gala the following week, but Riley had already met with several of them. Their stories reminded her of her own journey. Young people who had faced discrimination or challenges but refused to let those experiences define them negatively. As the day wound down, Riley received a call from her Aunt Maya. "How does it feel to be officially 18 and officially in charge?" Maya asked. "It feels scary and exciting and overwhelming all at the same time," Riley admitted. "But Maya, I keep thinking about what Dad used to say about businesses having a responsibility to their communities. I think he would be proud of what we're building here. He would be incredibly proud, Maya said. You've taken something terrible that happened to you and used it to help thousands of other people. That's the kind of person he raised you to be. That evening, Riley made one final stop before heading home. She drove to Kevin Rodriguez's old apartment building, not to confront him, but to deliver something in person. Kevin had lost his job, his reputation, and his career in retail management after the viral video. Riley had heard through various sources that he was struggling to find work, living on unemployment benefits and dealing with depression. While she couldn't forget or excuse what he had done to her, she also believed in the possibility of redemption. She left an envelope at his door with no return address. Inside was an application for the Chen Foundation's new Second Chances program, an initiative that provided job training and placement assistance for people who had lost employment due to discriminatory behavior, provided they completed an intensive bias training program and demonstrated genuine commitment to change. Riley didn't know if Kevin would take advantage of the opportunity, but she wanted him to know it existed. The goal wasn't to punish people forever for their mistakes, but to help them become better. As she drove home through the city where her transformation had begun, Riley thought about all the young people who would walk into Chen Fashion Empire stores in the months and years to come. Because of what had happened to her, they would be treated with dignity and respect regardless of their appearance, their background, or their perceived economic status. The girl who had been kicked out of Elegance Fashion Store for looking poor was gone. In her place was a young CEO who had proven that even the most painful experiences could become catalysts for positive change. Riley's phone buzzed with a text message from Carmen at the Elegance store. Just wanted you to know, we had our highest sales day in store history today, and every single customer left with a smile. Thank you for showing us how to do business the right way. Riley smiled as she read the message. This was what success really looked like. Not just profit margins and stock prices, but a business that made people feel valued and respected. Her father had built an empire based on quality products and customer service. She was transforming it into something even more important, a company that understood that how you treat people matters just as much as what you sell them. As she pulled into the driveway of the house she now shared with her Aunt Maya, she had insisted on staying in the same modest neighborhood where she had learned so many important lessons. Riley felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to create positive change, and new chances to prove that young people could lead with both compassion and strength. But tonight, on her 18th birthday, Riley Chen could rest knowing that she had kept the promise she made to herself that day 6 months ago. She had made sure that what happened to her would never happen to anyone else, at least not in any business she controlled, and that was just the beginning.